Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. This week we continue to try to understand the situation 4 young Nigerian men have found themselves in India. If you watched the program last week, you remember the story of Oladapo Olatubosun, Dixon, Oyekune Oluwabeniga and Paul Osage, who were implicated in a criminal case on the allegation of committing online credit fraud. After 5 months in jail, by which time the Nigerian High Commission in India posted bail and stood surety for the men, they were remanded to the Prt.1 detention camp in Tamil Nadu state. And that's where they have been for the past 2 years. And if they stay longer, it will be 3. When we told the story last week, the Nigerian High Commission was yet to give us an official reply, but we pieced together from conversations with a consular official that back when the case was still fresh, there had been some attention and attempts to release them from the camp. As so far, it seems the trail has gone cold, and we're yet again awaiting official information as to what really happened. And of course, a response from the Indian central government. While it does seem difficult getting public officials to follow up on the case, the young men await discouraged, most times watching other nationals come and go from the camp and their fates undecided. This week, our guest, Professor Nsongura Ndomnana, an international legal expert, discusses India's treatment of foreigners, or aliens as they're referred to in international law. He tries to make sense of the country's domestic laws as regards the unique set of people and compares it to international norms. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You've watched the story, at least a briefer version of the story of these 4 young men in the Prt.1 detention camp in India. Yes. What did you make of their situation?
Well, the picture is not quite clear. There are still some issues that might need to be sorted out. But if the story is as presented by the suspects, that's what it appears they are, then I think there's a lot more that the Nigerian government will need to do. But obviously we need to look at the position of the law generally, and then from there now fitting the story into those situations and see where we can go from there.
Speaking of the law itself, I mean, I know that every country has specific laws when it comes to foreigners. Of course, if you come in, you commit a crime, you lose all rights and privileges to being able to stay and live freely and move about freely and so on. But for a country like India, I mean, or let's not even narrow it down to India. Let's just say for foreigners now, Nigerians living outside. What are the laws that could actually, hamper their free movements and freedom of rights?
Let me say this, on the position of aliens in international law. An alien is any foreign national who enters another country. Any foreigner that's the popular language, is a foreigner. Who comes into Nigeria, who is not a citizen of Nigeria, is by international law regarded as an alien. Now, all countries are not, there's no country that is under any obligation to admit an alien into its own country. That is one of the incidences of sovereignty. So every country is sovereign and decide who should be allowed into its country or not. And oftentimes, some countries go into bilateral agreements which waive some immigration and visa requirements that will allow certain category of citizens to enter those other countries free. But most countries provide some conditions that must be met or spelled out. One of these is visa requirements. Now, if you enter lawfully after satisfying those immigration requirements, then you are regarded as a lawful alien. You could go there for business, you could go there for studies, you could go there for any other activity, it could even be for tourism. But oftentimes, some persons enter other countries without meeting those requirements, or even where they entered lawfully, probably they were given a specified time limit, maybe 3 months or 6 months, and they have overstayed. In those situations, they become illegal aliens. Now, generally under international law, where such situations arises, is a very straightforward matter, which is that when they are apprehended, they could be deported or expelled from their country. But it's a different thing entirely. There are criminal issues involved.
So like for example, these young men, they're believed to have committed online credit fraud.
Yes.
They're being accused, although they say they're innocent, of course, but that's yet to be proven. But in a case where a foreigner commits a crime in a in its host country.
Yes.
What are the laws that apply?
Now again, one of the incidents of sovereignty is that anyone who enters a country, India in this case, whether it's a citizen or a non-citizen or an alien, is subject to the law of that country. We mean that it's also subject to the criminal law of that country if he commits a crime. So he could be tried in that country. But he could also be deported into his home country if the crime for which he commits is also a crime in his own country of nationality. So in this case, if the crime for which these individuals are alleged to have committed in India is also a crime in Nigeria, there are two ways. India could try them on the basis of territoriality, the principle of territoriality. But they could also be sent back to Nigeria, and they could be tried in Nigeria on the basis of nationality principle. Now, a number of factors determine which one might want to exercise jurisdiction. Some countries may not have the resources, and they may not want to waste their resources on such effort. They rather want to channel their resources for economic development or to assist their citizens. So they might prefer to deport them and hand them over to their country of nationality for prosecution. Well, that is not the situation in this case. So we would have expected that India will have exercised their criminal jurisdiction and follow the due process of law, and then the court will decide accordingly.
But something is wrong, because these guys have been here for 2 years. I mean, they're not in prison, they're not in jail. Neither have they been to court, but they've just been in a detention camp for 2 years.
Yeah. That takes us to the Constitution of India. Section 22, although they call it article, but we call it section here. Article 22 of the Constitution of India provides for, in fact, the whole of Chapter 4 of that Chapter 3 of that Constitution deals with fundamental rights, just like our own Chapter 4 deals with fundamental rights. Now, Article 22 provides for liberty of persons, especially in situations where they have been arrested or detention. Now, that article provides that no one shall be detained without giving a reasonable explanation for the cause of that detention within a reasonable period. It also goes on to provide that no one shall be detained with beyond 24 hours without being charged to court. Or if there is any reason for extension, then that must be given by the magistrate. There could be reasons like that. Now, that same article provides some exceptions to this general proviso. And one of the exceptions is that for any aliens, they could be detained in